Good morning and welcome to LoreLines episode 130. This is our first episode of 2025. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a good new year. We've had a bit of a break for December, but we are back. And while we don't have a specific topic, there is a lot to cover since I think the last thing that we had talked about was the Vanadil raid. We haven't talked about
hmm
MSQ, any of the new stuff, any of the rampant speculations that we've had going on. Meowth, good morning.
Good morning. Well, morning. Good afternoon.
Well, it's morning here. Afternoon, wherever you may
And
be,
Happy New Year,
if you had
everyone.
a morning today, I hope it was good.
I think I slept like 2 hours, but I am actually quite. Mm, I'm quite active today, so let's don't suffer for me falling asleep or anything like that.
You sound much more perky than usual.
Yeah, I'm in one of these episodes. So yeah, we left it at Vanadil, and we didn't discuss anything from the patch. And there's quite a lot of things to discuss. So I don't know where you want to
Well,
begin.
let's begin by what we've been up to the past 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
So for me, I've mostly just been busy with work. So I haven't been on very much. I haven't even finished the tribal quests. So I'm working on that right now.
Uh, I've been in brain melt for these past weeks. It's been exhaustive work. And Ellie can attest because she was working with that with me, which I mean, it may have been a bit quiet in the server lately, but it's because it's one another. It's again the same case as the unholy file. It's things that I don't know how to explain it. If I were to discuss them in the open, one, I would be there. There would be the looks and the madcap allegations, which they're completely fine. But I don't want to be interrupted constantly about meow that's madcap because it breaks my concentration. So when I'm in deep work, I prefer it to be more private. So, but don't believe for a moment that it's been quiet for me because no, it's not.
That's good to know. But I would say put it out there. Let be the first to put it out there. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things, but if you're right, then everyone's like, "Oh my God, Meowth knows the future. She's amazing."
In due time. First, I would say that first, in order to discuss these things, we would have to make the script, and you're going to hate me because I'm going to pile work on you this year.
You're fine. You're fine. I'll be happy to have scripts. Like I have all these half finished scripts right now that we have like 15 scripts, and Mouth is like, I have 20 more for you.
Not entirely wrong, but yeah.
So tell you what I'm gonna do, and I think this is what we really need here is we need a tinfoil hat to put on our little avatars so that when we're going at it, we can just have it on our characters and we can just go rampant.
I mean, that's my default state.
I mean, yeah, but not really. So I'm digging up a picture right now we can use. So anyway,
Right. Where should we begin, first of all?
oh god, a holy validation emote. Yes, I
I
agree.
listen, if I'm correct in any of these things, you're going and this year is 2025, which means by the end of the year we should have the first trailer more or less, right?
Hmm.
For the next expansion.
Yep.
If I'm any right about what all this thing, you're not going to hear the end of it from me.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. All right. So
But
I'm
yeah,
Meowth has a hat on.
I have a hat. Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
Just in case. And
that's
we're all
fitting.
gonna get one because we all have our moments.
I mean, you could use the tinfoil hat emote that's been in our server that I drew like 4 years ago. So
I could, but I don't have it in here. So we got to find a way to get emojis and emotes in this Twitch chat going. And we've been talking about that for like 3 years, and it hasn't happened yet
yeah,
because we haven't figured it out. Oh, if you have script ideas, let us know. I'll make
yeah.
literally anything. I'll be like, I don't agree with any of this, but I'll make it.
Yeah, I know. Ellie has great ideas for the script, and she was asking if we can make a video with the proper, of course, uh, credit.
Yeah,
So yeah.
we absolutely can. I don't mind
So
crediting anyone as long as
yeah,
someone has a good idea and it's well cited and sourced. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah, we don't make any money on this.
so I have an idea.
Yeah.
How about we begin with Heavenstone?
Okay. Uh, the
Have
thing
you
about
done Heavenstone?
no, I was about to do it right now. Actually,
Right. Okay. I'm going to just point out two things. First, it's the year of the scree.
yeah, it is.
Uh, and credit to Moose to that for this. He is the one who actually mentioned on Twitter
Yeah, the last time
uh,
is when it was shut down.
the last time. So we never have had a snake year in 14. This, considering what the snake represents, is relevant. And I don't know if it, I mean, of course, the year does its own thing, but considering that Yoshi P keeps track of astrology stuff
Mhm.
for the game, I wouldn't be surprised that there's like no coincidence that Dawn Trail is heading where it's heading
Right.
on the year of the snake. So, I'm going to put that there. And second, when you do the event, uh, do the fortune getting there's something that you can get some fortunes and
Yeah,
lines.
they've done that every year.
Try to get as many of them because they're loaded this year.
Yeah, I saw Aeneas posted one. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I got as many as I could, and I was like, I just I at this point I just roll. I've lost the capacity to freak out. I'm just rolling my eyes. I'm like, okay, this is where we're going.
All right.
But yeah. Okay, so
So I'm on. I was just turning in like 2 days worth of dailies, and now I'm doing today's or yesterday's,
right,
and then I'm
right.
gonna do Heaven's Turn. I might as well do it live on stream because I haven't done it.
That's all right. Uh, right. So other things. So we have uh, why?
We have
Sorry.
Hildebrand. We haven't talked about Hildebrand.
I've done Hildebrand.
I also have
Quite
not done
interesting.
Hildebrand. I hear it's great though.
It's great.
I've seen
Though then again,
I've seen the Nashu emo everywhere.
it's great. It's going into themes that I suspect are going to be relevant next expansion, and but I was paying extra special attention to Hildebrand this patch because Ellie and I have been redoing the Hildebrand quests for this because I was like, because I hadn't done the Endwalker quest line until just recently, going into this whole mess, so to
Hmm.
speak, and I was like, I was seeing so many things in Hildebrand, but I already knew that they take refuge in Hildebrand being like the height of absurdity to drop bombs in everything, right?
Yeah, because they're like, oh, no
This
one
has
will
been
take this
a
seriously.
long
We can
time.
sneak a bunch of
This,
stuff in here.
they don't sneak off. They drop bombs and going back to, because we've been replaying the whole thing, even back in a Run Reborn, they were leaning into stuff, and it's like, okay, so this is where we're going. So they've been sneaking all of these things in Hildebrand,
Hmm.
and with the angle I suspect highly they taken with the story, it makes all the sense that all the logic and truth in this story is in the absurdity of Hildebrand. So for
Yeah,
if I
there's a
would
certain
say,
logic and consistency to that. Because Hildebrand usually does hint at what's coming, as strange as that
well,
sounds.
hint.
Oh, are
That's
we
one
leaning
way to
into 13 levels
That's
of
one way to
subtlety?
put it. I mean, yes and no, but again, it's because not hint. I mean, yes and no, but it's again this thing. You have to get a mental state of sorts to go into Hildebrand and be like, okay, I see what they're doing. I understand that it can be a complicated process, and I was helped by the fact that I was seeing where Dontrell is going
Hmm.
because of what I know. But the exercise these past months and especially these weeks has been finding out that even without that context, you can take this idea, so to speak, and be like, okay, I'm going to find stuff that supports the idea, and it's everywhere, and it's like, I don't even know anymore. It's this thing in which either I'm 100% correct, or I'm just completely wrong, and there's no going to be middle ground here. But I can eat crow if needed be, so. But
I
yeah,
mean, you haven't eaten it yet, so
I know I did eat crow uh, for for Endwalker, but that's the point. That's Oh god, you don't want me to start rambling about this right now. This is 7.1 cop. Don't make me ramble about this. I'm just going to say it, leave it at. Endwalker may well be a masterpiece in writing, not because the story per se. You know how my opinion has been on Endwalker all this time, right?
Mhm.
Well, these past months and special and weeks, by me kind of reassuring me, Endwalker may be a masterpiece in writing on the level of Shadowbringers, but not because you necessarily have to like the story it's telling you, but because Endwalker is designed deliberately to gaslight and deceive the fan base. And if that's what it set out to do, it did it masterfully, considering how the fan base is the state of the fan base right now.
Right.
So, so if that's what it aimed to do, then the writing is spectacular in the sense of it fooled everyone.
So, I
But
mean,
yeah,
yes, but at the same time, when it came out, they could have been entirely serious about it and
yeah,
then, changed their
it
minds
could,
after the fact
it
and
could,
said, okay,
it could
let's
have been
make it
it
different.
could have been. I discussed this with Neela like months ago, that he was like, uh back when this was released, I don't think it was it was the case, and they planned this. But honestly, we've been finding stuff that they've been planning this since around Reborn Cove.
Okay.
So it makes more sense to me that they got. I mean, coming from the writers of something like Shadowbringers, it actually makes more sense to me that they can write a story with this intention and be a masterpiece. But because one of the things that that it was depressing to me about Endwalker is that we came from Shadowbringers. And I was like, we know these people can make amazing storylines. Why is this so inconsistent? One thing is that they discarded everything from Shadowbringers. The other thing was they had created a bad piece, and both of them were actually depressing thoughts, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, uh, it makes more logical sense to me. But I mean, of course, I'm not inside their heads, so it could be both ways. But
But see, I'm not opposed to the idea that an expansion can be made better by other expansions, but if you look at it in a vacuum, uh, which is very hard to do in this game because all the expansions are connected. It's not just it's not one or the other. They're all one story. It's just what happens in that part of the story, I guess. So they'd be like chapters or seasons instead of you know
yes, but
spin-offs.
there's a pattern. There's a
Yeah.
pattern in the expansions, in that. Uh, oh God, I'm actually going into this. There's a pattern in which uh, one expansion gets a middle expansion in which it has a different storyline, and then it retakes this the
So yeah,
other
yeah,
one, like expansion, the
yeah,
theme that was from 2 expansions ago.
yeah. And
And
I've brought that up before too, where things that come up now will pay off in two expansions. That
do you know though, Cobb, that this pattern we found out was already established in 2.0?
yes, it was.
I meant, like, they actually gave us the hint about this,
Okay.
like in game, in quest. So it's one of these things that it was like, okay.
Hmm.
But yeah, uh, so lots of things actually. So I was trying to convince myself I'm not going to talk about this about today. I'm not going to stop it.
No, no, we're
I
gonna talk
am
about this.
talking about it. I am talking about that. So great. But we were here to talk about 7.1, so. Okay, where do we start when it comes to 7.1?
So, Sphene is either a creation or preservation or an ASEAN construction.
I can basically tell you the second is not the case. I can already tell you that. That's yeah, it doesn't hold. I do think though it's not impossible that preservation is using some form of ASEAN knowledge, ASEAN something,
I
but
don't think an
not
ASEAN is
because not
actively
because
controlling.
they not because they've involved with this. I'm actually more on the side that if there's something they're using, they hijacked or they have forcefully taken.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Uh,
No, don't
uh,
believe
no,
that. It's no.
yeah, I don't believe that for a second.
But
The issue is if it's an ASEAN, I'm gonna be actually really mad because not because we're
it,
done with them, but just because why? Like I cannot fathom a motivation right now. We've already done the crazy ASEAN. We've already done the ones that are super loyal to the cause. Like I don't know what else there would be except for the ASEAN coming to us and saying help me, which is what I want.
uh, okay. Uh, So yeah, no, and besides that, preservation goes against everything the ancients are. So
Oh
uh,
yeah, absolutely. The only loophole
it's a
to that,
complete.
yeah, it's a complete perversion of everything the ancients believed in. My issue is that Emmett Silk had no issue letting our soul fracture and tear apart. And to me, that might indicate that they only really consider unsundered souls to be the ones of any value. So the sundered souls, they're like whatever, do whatever you want with them. We don't care. The end result, of course, being don't destroy them because eventually we need to sacrifice them all to Zodiark.
I would discuss the point though of Hades being well. Let's look. I mean,
Being what?
just habit, force of habit. I used to call him by real name, but
Ugh.
uh, uh, right. The point that I would argue is that one of the reasons he actually was inviting the warrior of light, aside from this being potentially much more deeper than we think right now,
Mhm.
which is an entirely real possibility right now, uh, is that one thing there's hints about this, but and it would be get a bit long about that. But it's not so much that he was fine with letting the soul of the warrior of light, especially that soul, if you think about that,
Mhm.
shatter and fracture. Uh, in Shadowbringers, and this is going to become another monograph on Hades. In Shadowbringers, uh, he invites the warrior of light to Amarot with two purposes there. One of them is trying to trigger the Word of Light's memory assassin because we know that with memory triggers, it awakens power. So if he created Amarot, he and well, recreated Amarot, and then the whole sequence of the final days, it was trying to prod the Warrior of Light into remembering. So even to the very end, uh, he was trying to get to jog the memory of the Atom's memory to allow them to withstand the light.
Meanwhile, he was the one who
In
didn't remember.
uh, well, that's. I mean, when it comes to the whole thing about the Ensinger, yes, but uh, that's this. Don't throw me off track because there's so much right now. I'm trying to stick to one train of thought. Let me explain. And the other thing is, in the case it didn't work. Now I have even more reasons to believe that what Hades intended was to, well, I'm possibly kill the Warrior of Light, but not in the sense of killing them in animosity, but to take the soul before the Light Warden transformation take over, in
Mhm.
which it would have transformed the body and it could have served a purpose, but the soul would be safe. And I have reasons to believe this because of the work we've been doing about this. So yeah, so even in that situation, uh, it would be trying to protect the soul.
Okay.
So to them, that's uh, the most important part. Mitron unaltered. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I the issue with the soul thing is the game's a little fuzzy on when souls are consumed or not. Because they'll say, oh, their soul is consumed, it's gone. Case in point, Elidibus, and then it's not actually. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
it's a little. I don't know if it's the localization or
could
what.
be,
What.
could be.
So
I
that's
mean,
that's
could
one.
be
The
like,
only
for example, like for example, I recall in the description of the adventure, the quest logs, after the one for Shadowbringers, the final one, and it mentions that the axe of light, quote unquote, shatters Hades' soul,
Hmm.
but we know that he's still unsounded. So what shatters means there is, uh, questionable. I'm
Right.
more inclined to believe, though, that the blow kind of crippled him in a ethereal sense, but this is a bit complex. I'm not going to go into that right now.
Yeah, but I mean that's highlighting the exact issue I have.
Hmm. But yeah. Uh, but anyways, we were talking about preservation going against anything the Asians and the ancients were about,
Hmm.
and yeah, I need derail as usual. So yeah, that one thing I wanted to discuss before I forget, in terms of story significance, is the fact that we attend the funeral for Spin, right?
Right.
It sounds like it doesn't sound like much, but to me it's quite important because it's the first time uh, that we are seen paying proper respects to someone who has been our enemy, and that's a crucial plot point in terms of this whole thing. Uh, it's well, share your thoughts on that, and then maybe I elaborate a bit.
So yes, and I feel like we're doing that not for Sveen proper, but more for her people and Galulja. Um,
Hmm.
and I really liked, as painful as it was. And I don't mean painful as in like emotionally painful. I mean her voice was screechy and terrible. The kid who was like, "Are we just supposed to be sad forever?" Um, I I liked that because it reminded me of what Type Zero started to do and didn't follow through on, which was it was like, okay, here's a world where people don't remember people who die, and now suddenly they do, and they have to learn how to deal with that. And if this game does a really good job, it's going to take that from the level of Sphene and just go down to a very personal level and say like a child losing a parent or someone losing someone close to them and them having to deal with that and them going through that and us helping them go through that. And I would love to see something like that. But no, you're right in that we didn't really mourn any of the previous enemies that we fought. We didn't mourn Gaius. We didn't mourn Xenos either time. We didn't really mourn Emmett Selk even. Like we did it personally, but not like in a ceremony or anything. There wasn't any kind of ritual associated with it. It was just kind of like, okay, this happened. We're sad about it, but life goes on and we move on. Or what's his name? Yeah, exactly.
Well, they mentioned that Gulol Jaja had a funeral, just we just didn't attend,
Yeah,
or just they just didn't show it on the screen.
can I complain about something?
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Can I complain about Yoshi P saying, well, I think people like Zeralja or empathize with Zeralja a bit more once they get to know him in the next patch. And then the next patch came out and he was a fucking asshole and nobody liked him even more.
Uh, that there may be a twist there, though. So, I mean, I think we only got the first taste on Zoralja,
Yeah.
uh, but but that thing I want to discuss though a bit later on. But yeah, yeah, the thing with the funeral, paying respect for the dead. You could say that the one that well, I mean, Gaius is alive, so paying a funeral for Gaius is kind of like, I mean,
Yeah, but
defies the purpose, I suppose.
we didn't
But
know that though.
uh, but if you think about that, there's no real time to mourn anyone because those two characters that, for example, are closer to Warrior of Light, that would be Horsefant and Isel,
Hmm.
there's no real funeral for them either. Like
Yep.
because in the context of Heavensward, the story keeps going and doesn't give you time to mourn the losses of them. Like immediately after Horsefant dies, there's the urgency to chase after Thordan, and after Isel, you're basically going to Azizla. And only later, and it's not even a funeral, the Warrior of Light and Alfino and Tataru place the shield on Horsefant's grave,
Hmm.
and Stinian later on leaves the flowers on us in Anasisla for Isel. That's the only funeral they get, and with Isel, you could argue that's she's a heretic to Ishgard, so it would be a bit perhaps more controversial for these guardians to celebrate a funeral about her. But Horsefant, uh, it stands out more, and it just drives the point that throughout this whole story, there's not been time to mourn anyone.
Yeah. I would also point to Moonbrita in ARR
That too, yeah, true, true.
because we actually do a funeral for her, and
It's more
it's
memorial. It's
interrupted.
more,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
memorial, but it's interrupted by dragons and Azael.
Hmm. Well, not really. In fact, it was actually Liz, well, Ida, but Liz, who wanted to bring, I don't know what it was actually, it was flowers to the Scholar's Mark, but yeah, it's one of these things in which there's no proper, not proper funeral,
Hmm.
and it's like, not even for Papalimo either.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like
uh,
we never have been really given time to grieve in this
mhm.
game.
Or you could perhaps say that the game doesn't let you grieve.
I mean, the game lets us grieve as players because we have so much downtime between patches, even more
Players,
so
but
now,
not to the
but
Warrior of
not
Light.
the character.
And uh, and it's a pattern I've been picking up, and I suspect it may be deliberate, like to create this sensation that you don't really get to mourn, to feel that sorrow, to let that sorrow seep, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Uh, but yeah, and uh, and again, when it comes to the most important case in all of this, because Xenos, I mean, he's a great character, but he's rather nuts, and
He is, but
and
at the same time, we mourn Xenos exactly the same as Emmett Selk, uh,
not
because
not really.
I mean,
I mean, we mourn Xenos in the sense of he was a good rival, he was a good enemy, we respect him. And there was something that Xenos did that no one else has had, well, no one else, quote unquote, because, but most
see,
people in this game has not realized, and is that the Warrior of Light is a person with their own wants and desires
yeah,
below, beneath the whole thing about the Warrior of
and
Light. The one
and
who actually explores
and
the
and
the Warrior of Light into adventurous Xenos.
and I absolutely agree with that. And do you want to know what my Warrior of Light's desire that I took away from that was? Is that they're just looking for a place to die, and we're very disappointed that that wasn't it. Because when you wake up and you're on the ship, you
Yeah.
look so sad. You're just like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm alive. Damn.
Hmm.
It's like, wow, okay.
I mean, that's an interesting point. I do have to go through Endwalker properly, but
Yeah, like, and
yeah,
that's
and
that's how it looked to me. It's just like you open your eyes and then you look down, and it's just this really sad look. Hold
hmm.
that thought. Okay, I'm holding it. I've been holding it since the end of Endwalker. Is that my Warrior of Light is just this insane suicidal maniac that just happens to be really good at fighting. And so everyone's like, oh, they're a hero. But really, they're just trying to get themselves killed in the most reckless way possible.
Right, right. Well, that thing with Xenos is basically that sense of having someone to understand the Warrior of Light on a more personal level. Something that sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the time, the Science don't even realize this.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Alfino and Alice. Alfino and Alice know the Warrior of Light and care for the Warrior of Light on a deeper level than the rest of the Science. So yeah, they've also had more development with them. That's true, but yeah, that's something quite interesting to mention. Uh, and of course, the thing with Hades. Sorry about that. I'm just too used to you to
No, it's fine.
separate
It's the
title
same person.
and name. It's the same, but I mean, I think even I think now more important than ever, it's relevant to start separating, so to speak, mask from person. But I just picked the habit years ago. But but when it comes to him, uh, it's the whole thing we've been discussing at some other point, that the Warrior of Light feels a personal connection to him, even if they don't realize how deep
Mm-hmm.
just yet. Uh, but the Signs don't have the same connection obligation to honor him the way the Warrior of Light does.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, so right now, any remembrance we can have, and this is another thing that can be multi-layer as of now. But let's just keep it for now as what we understand it. Even so, designers don't have any obligation about that. And to be honest, the request was for the Warrior of Light alone. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so but at the same time, I'm fairly sure that the Warrior of Light is not aware of the the caliber of the loss that his loss was. Uh, but that's another kind of worms to get into there. But it was, I mean, it's quite telling nonetheless that he's presented as the enemy, as the villain. And even so, you go to Elpis, and there's an intention there to make the Warrior of Light react to him in a very particular way.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember what I'm trying to say, the
Yeah.
scenes I'm trying to. I mean, usually these sort of things they tend to keep more subdued and more to the player's interpretation. Something that they don't do when it comes to this. So, yeah, but and it just and I'm keeping it on the surface level. So I tend to be cautious when it comes to these things, but after these weeks of work, no longer. There is an intention.
So I Star-crossed heroes. No, Star-crossed haters. AC, here's. I would say Xenos loved us like an enemy. Uh,
I mean, yeah, but that's another kind of love if you think about
it
that.
is. It is. It's a borderline obsession. And I did not like Xenos. I hated him in Stormblood. And then he popped back up again all through Shadowbringers, and I was like, we're gonna have to deal with this motherfucker again. I hated him. I thought he was so boring. And then Endwalker happened, and I was like, this motherfucker in like 3 lines made me absolutely love him.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I was like, God damn it! Like, he was like they did such a good job redeeming him to me. Like he was irredeemable in game, but as a character to me, they did a great job showcasing his perspective and giving him a place in the story.
hmm.
Um, but that said, um, to what AC says, yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about Hades, that he was our nemesis and he also violated our body. He didn't violate our bodies. he let us violate our own bodies by giving us just enough information to let us go and be the reckless shitheads that we are.
I mean, the whole thing about getting into the body and in the soul is mm, not the best thing to do when it comes to things, but I mean, uh, you could say that by the end of Endwalker, he learns consent, so
Mm-hmm.
that's progress. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's he's not the best guy ever. You know, we all know that
Yeah, but I
he's crazy and quite very not the kind of guy that's heroic. But in that in but one thing that Xenos definitely isn't guilty of is of believing himself virtuous or on the right.
oh
He
no,
understands what he is. He
yeah,
understands who he is, and he wears with pride.
and that's
And
something that's rare even in real life, is just people knowing who they are. And not only did he
mm,
know who he was, he accepted who he was and he embraced it.
yeah,
Okay, yes, AC,
mm,
Xenos absolutely did jack our body and violate our bodies. That, yes, 100%.
yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah. Very few people on this planet that come close to our level of power like Xenos did. Perhaps Khalil Jaja, maybe. I think there's still, Mericidia. Because in order to live in Mericidia, I'm assuming the average level of the person who lives in Mericidia is like 110. Just because it's
Because
Australia and everything there is trying to kill you.
I knew you were going to go that way.
It's Australia. Like, people who live in Australia have to be like real life level at least 60, or they're gonna get bitten by a spider and die. And the spider is
That's
like
why
the spider's the
that's
size
why
of a
it makes
small dog.
that, that's another reason why it makes more sense that Mercedes will be 9.0 because we will need to be even more stronger to survive in Australia.
Wait. So I'm derailing now because I'm at the Heaven's Turn uh, place, and the
Hmm.
people are getting the achievement, the Great White Serpent of Squidge.
Yes.
Okay, so they're really going all in on this.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool. And that. I mean, the scree is important. Let's
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Yeah. AC, exactly. Like Alfred said, some men aren't looking for anything logical like money. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn, and it's true. Yeah. No step on snake. Yeah.
so yeah. So about yeah, and when it comes to this whole theme, it stood out to me in the sense that Sphin is the only time that we actually pay respects proper
Yeah.
to an enemy. Uh, Even if it was not necessarily for Sphin's sake, but nonetheless, it was a start, so to speak.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't. I mean, from there we go into Gulolja, wanting to know more about his mother, and then we go into Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fantastical, phenomenal dungeon, though. Uh, I wish Ayumi was here because we would did the whole tour of that dungeon, and there's details, narratively speaking, everywhere.
Mm.
Like you can do a run of that dungeon and read the progression of the dungeon as in narrative entirely, with
Right.
the symbols, the disposition of everything, the counting uh, rooms and pods and all that, and and yeah, it's and it only gets better when you actually are forced to explore the dungeon later on when gathering clues,
Mm-hmm.
because there's an extra reading on stuff later on.
Okay.
So so yeah.
I did enjoy that a
But
lot. That we took the time to go back in there. We didn't do that with Origenics. We should have, but we didn't.
yeah.
Um, because, I sat there staring at the Soul Blender for like, I don't know, a good 15
Same.
minutes.
Yeah, and the logs and everything. Yeah, Origenics is its own trip.
Yeah.
But yeah. And the fact I will always bring this up, that all the monsters, the bosses in Origenics, they're modeled after Sin Eaters.
Oh, I didn't make that
Yeah,
connection.
they are. The first light warden Philia is the first boss of Origenics. The second boss is the Forgiven Obscenity, the Bothri's mm, consort, and the third one is Eden Prime. So they're all Sin Eaters.
Wow. I never made that connection. That's insane.
Yeah, so do you remember that thing we discussed about this whole thing being the light as the enemy?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I liked that. And then there were people who were
we're
like,
picking
"No, it's too predictable." I was like, "Just shut up. It's a good story."
too predictable. Yeah, after stream I have to tell you some things about
Okay.
the fan base is not ready for what's coming to them.
I mean,
But
honestly,
yeah,
yeah. Like, if you think about it, everything that's happened in this game has been derivative of another Final Fantasy game, and in doing so, has created something original. And I'm fine with it when they
I mean,
do it not like the Endwalker patches. Or
yeah,
not
but
Endwalker. Yeah, Endwalker.
I still have to play through them because I bet I bet that they hid really interesting stuff. I know they already hid crucial stuff in there. In not just I mean I'm thinking meta narratively, but I as usual. But there's also soul mechanics surely there that
Mm-hmm.
are important. Ether, for example, ether consumption is one of them. But this gets long. We really have to get on that fucking script. But anyways, uh,
I agree, AC.
the thing,
Sorry, go ahead.
the the I mean, the second boss is based on Skatak because the Forgotten Obscenity shares that model. But when you see the pattern in that dungeon, it's about the Sin Eaters, not about Skatak.
Yeah,
So,
it's
I
less
mean,
about yeah. It's
so it's if you were saying if it were like like the original model is Skatak, of course,
mm-hmm.
but but then again you have to think of where is it sandwiched? Is it sandwiched between Philia, the first light wonder of Shadowbringers, and Eden Prime? So it makes more sense that the thing that they want you to think about is the Sin Eaters, not Voidsens. But then again, I suppose Voidsens and Sin Eaters are kind of like two sides of the same coin. So.
Yeah, they are.
But yeah. So so do you want to go about the dungeon on its own, like for its own sake? Discuss the dungeon. It was a cool dungeon for me. I mean,
I mean, we can. I liked it. I wasn't a huge fan of the Troll Withdrawal at the end because it was just the Monty Python rabbit. Uh, and that's really all I remember about that part. But I thought it was really interesting how, it's basically a research facility.
mm,
And, they did some pretty messed up stuff there.
mm. So yeah, when it comes to the rabbit, I find I think it was Ellie who mentioned that they literally gave us they literally gave us a rabbit hole, and everyone the first instinct was to jump inside.
Of course. But it also very much reminded me of Bahamut, where you're using this creature as a power source basically,
Hmm. Right.
and
Right.
like that just made it
More ties
more
to
angry.
Alag.
Yeah.
Though to soothe your anger, I don't think it's elegance involved. I think it's someone else
No,
using
it's
elegant themes
just
and elegant technology.
this is basically the Alag of another shard is what we're looking at,
Uh,
on that level of technology. Um, but
uh,
I would say that on a moral and uh, imperial perspective, Alexandria is not an imperial inclined nation, so whereas Alag was an empire, uh, and Alexandria is clearly a monarchy.
right. I don't think it's about shards, but let's not go into that
Okay,
because it
okay,
gets
we'll
deep.
we'll table that for now.
uh, right. Where was I? Ah, yeah. The second boss. Well, that was quite interesting because I mean I haven't played Seven Remake, but I've had people know point out that the soul's effects that we were dealing with were so similar to the whispers in the remake series. And um, have you played the remake
I've
series?
played remake. I have what's it, Rebirth.
Right. Yes.
I haven't touched it. Like
Right.
I literally installed it, and I have not touched it even once since it came out.
Well, if they're actually drawing upon the whispers, those things, for those who don't know, are basically uh, mm, mm, related to fate
Yeah,
and
that I
timelines.
know,
So
and basically,
having that in that reference in that dungeon, uh, it just aligns with things that we've been discussing.
yeah.
Honestly,
Well, that yes. So we know that the timeline we're on shouldn't exist for one. We know that we've created multiple paradoxes to get us to this timeline, which I'm presuming are able to continue existing because Alexander exists. Actually, no, definitively, because the multiverse exists because of Alexander. But that said, there needs to be a rectifying event because it's entirely possible that other timelines are fracturing because of what we've done. And uh, by this timeline continuing to exist, it's destroying other timelines. Yeah, the antibodies of fate, exactly.
well, I mean, uh, the another thing that's important in that dungeon, that second boss,
Mm-hmm.
with all the pots and that, that's it's even reminiscent still stylistically. It's one of the it works as one of the towers, like the towers in Endwalker.
Okay.
Like the disposition is very similar to the pots of both the towers, and particularly the room in which we fight Anima in the Tower of Babel. So yeah,
Hmm.
and mm, 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 yeah, that. So what else? Uh, there's a lot actually. Um, so I'm going to do a quick rundown. In the first, when you go into the dungeon, there's one room in which there's like a um two curtains and some beds. There's like one of these red lights that has fallen
Mm-hmm.
and is projecting light on the sheet that's covering one of the. There's a human figure cooked out like in a ghost. Like there's no one behind that, and there's a shadow there in the red light. It's creepy as fuck, but at the same time, I also realized that the red lights that project red, well, this light, they actually follow the sigil of Azim. So uh, especially considering what we do later on with that, I suspect that the dungeon is actually telling us a story in the composition of the dungeon, because we go in there to go search for the truth of Gululja's heritage, right?
Hmm. Right.
Um, but if we're reading meta-narratively, it can be the beginning of the Warrior of Light to delve into the depths of 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 the identity of Asm, which is, I mean, after all, we're going to eventually have it. We're going to go. We're not going to go after to go out of Dawntrail without learning about Asm and
Hmm.
likely embracing the identity of Asm, because that's the point of this whole thing. I mean, the Grail made it quite plainly. Uh, so it's not just that. I mean, you can. I mean, red is the color that we tend to associate with the Asians or the convocation because of the brands, right?
Right.
So, having the red light and the cut out figure of someone there, you can make a reading of that. And this is going to be me rambling a bit, so bear with me. uh, you can interpret that as the cut out figure of Asm, as the no one's there. And I'm saying that wording very deliberately, and Ellie surely knows why, but I'm not going to elaborate on that because that's stuff for other stuff. So, but it's like the not person, but that even at, but if you're here scratching, that's my cat. So apologies for that.
Okay.
Um, um. So it's the whole thing too that they mention, if you recall in MSQ in Dawntrail, that you forget about the person that passed away, but what they can't forget is the feeling that someone's gone.
Right.
So it's like the whole there, that they feel that something should be there, but it's not there. But you can't recall what it was. That's what I quite sure. That's the situation of Asen right now, except for Hades, because he was the one who kept the memory of Asim alive. I mean, we had the short story of the Tales of the New Moon recently,
Right.
which basically confirmed that La Habrea had forgotten as well.
Yep.
So that meant that the only keeper of memory of Asim's memory was effectively Hades.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. La
uh,
Habrea didn't even remember his family.
yeah. It was a harsh short story, honestly.
It was.
But yeah, and so yeah, it's basically the cut out figure of potentially Asim. Then we go into the second. Then we go into the second room inside there, and we counted uh 10 pots in behind the crystal.
Hmm.
With, I don't actually recall how many with people inside them, but I think there was a deliberate number of them. I think it was I think there were like 4 of them empty or so, and the other with people inside. And then in the, like, to the back of the room, there's like um there's like another 6 pots, but 2 of them are broken, so you can count 14 pots between all of them, right?
Right.
Um, so it was such an interesting reading, that one, because that's also the one in which the creepy handprints start to you see them, and if you count, if we come with this thing about it's telling a story, you count the pots, it's 10. That's the number of the Sandudasians. And then there's, I think it was 6 inside the pots, which are the ones that we know that have been, that are dead. Inside the post, like, there's this water, and water is associated with the live stream, with the ethereal sea. So you could understand this as 6 of them inside inside the ethereal sea, right? Of the Sandud, I mean.
Right.
and then there's four, like I think there's four of them empty, which potentially could be those Asians that we have not met. And I don't know if we will met, I suppose, at some point, but I don't expect it to be soon, though. Um, and then the other four pods that are outside the crystal, you could tie three of them to the Unsanded and a fourth one to Asem, because here's the thing: one of the footprints seem to come from the crystal to one of the pods. Then there's a mess of them, and then it goes into the creepy hallway with the rooms, and that one room illuminated red, which is the one with the most apparel and all of a mess of bloody handprints.
Mm-hmm.
And we were discussing this with Ayumi. I wish she was here discussing this whole thing. Because it seems like someone was trying to get something from this whole thing. And if it's actually a reading about the Asians or the convocation, we go into the hallways with that red light, which is basically they're the sign after Asim's sigil. And I suspect that what the story is telling us is the abduction of Asim's consciousness by someone else. And you know who am I pointing at? So and you know what makes it best though? That you go to the panel control room in which we later on go to retrieve the truth of Gulolja's heritage,
Mm-hmm.
and you go to the panel, and you know what colors are the panel symbol in that we unlock to get into the depths. That is like this. It's light blue and pink, which are the colors associated with Ultima.
Yeah.
and just so you know, there is a really subtle but really clear reference to Final Fantasy 16 in this whole process in which we explore later on the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the dialogue box in which we retrieve the identification key.
Right.
That the Word of Light starts rummaging, and then there's a particular line in which it says, "You dig deeper." Those are the lyrics of "Find the Flame," Clive's theme in 16. So
Well, that's not disconcerting at all.
no, I mean, of course not. I do believe they're setting this supposed trilogy of expansions because they hinted at it being
I will
so.
be supremely disappointed if we're not dealing with Ultima.
I mean,
Immensely.
at this point at this point it's an inevitability club. It's there.
Yeah, like
Like
I mean, it is an inevitability, or at least it should be. My point is, if the devs decide to go with another villain or something like that, I will be disappointed because we need to deal with Ultima because everything is pointing to Ultima right now.
yeah, but it's pointing, it's everywhere, but it's not in plain sight. So you could argue that the fanbase is not picking up on that. But then again, fandom literacy and all that.
Okay. AC Gears and Arms asked how many times is the hardest to beat going to beat. Okay. I want to do this. Let's say 70 beats.
The heart of Sabik,
yeah.
The heart
All right, 70
Sabik,
beats per minute. Times, let's see, 3,600 minutes in a day. Times 365 days in a year. Times 12,000 years. Okay, so it's going to be 1,103,760,000,000 times. That's how many times.
So
there's your answer.
So that's one thing that's quite interesting. If you read the logs as well, which is something that I'm going to weave into the scene in which later on, because this is when we'll first learn about Teshulja, which is the mother of Gulja.
Mm-hmm.
Which we learn that she was pretty much obsessed and
she was
thirsty
insane.
and
she was like, "You're the only other Mamulja here. Let's have a baby."
So so that's quite interesting. She was pretty much a stalker,
Yeah, she was.
yeah, it was very much obsession that. Then, um, right.
Yeah,
So
she handed Zeralda or yeah, Zeralda a cup and was like, "Here, fill this up. Don't ask any questions." By the way, this
so
is your kid.
yeah, right. So there's this whole thing about uh we kind of led to believe in that flashback that the other guy, the chief, Kaniloka, is like the sus guy, right?
Hmm.
Then again, we're dealing with deception in many levels. As an aside, at this point, I'm quite sure that the whole story about Alexandria, the whole thing about Lindblom dropping the nuke on. I think I'm quite sure that's actually false, and it was the other way around, because it matches with the story of Final Fantasy IX for starters, and second, there's fairly an amount of evidence that we've been dealing not just here in Dawntrail, but throughout the whole story about someone putting like pinning the blame on another side.
Oh
So
man, I
and
would love that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would love a side story about revisionist history, being like the history that
yes,
we've been told about Alexandria is fabricated. It's not true, and Alexandria was actually the aggressor. That would be awesome.
yeah, I'm fairly sure that's going to be the case, but not. It's not going to be limited to Alexandria and Lindblom, but rather than Alexandria and Lindblom are going to be the gateway to their real weight of this implication of revisionism.
Hmm.
So I'm going to just leave that there. I'm leaving so many things there, but I swear that it's so much. I could be here for hours, and you don't want me to be here for
Yeah,
hours. Uh,
my thing is we know Electrope was discovered and they harnessed it, blah 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 blah. But whatever nation discovered Electrope first on Alexandria's home shard would have had such a massive advantage over all the other nations.
hmm,
Especially once the Lalafell arrived and started doing their arcane
right.
bullshit. Um, and it just makes me wonder if Alexandria became so advanced, what did the other countries look like? Like, were they as advanced?
Uh,
My point is basically, was Alexandria the first country to discover Electrope, and because of that, were able to do what they did?
hmm, we're
Or,
only given the we're only given that Electrobit was discovered.
yeah,
So,
well,
uh,
that's it's spitballing, but it's kind of a thought that leads me to think, well, if they weren't the first, then it stands to reason that some of the enemy nations are also out there.
well, that's a bit more complicated, but I mean, I suppose it's another
I would
possibility.
love
But
that. I would love it if for example another nation, I haven't really played 9, but if another nation pops up somewhere else in Tyrol and is like, "Hey, it's you. Let's go to war," and starts lobbing nukes, basically.
narratively, I think it would be a bit too complicated.
Yeah, it probably would
But
be.
uh, but
I think it would
like
make for a good
sometimes,
story.
sometimes I mean, yeah, but sometimes you have to think on a creator level and be like, this is a bit too much for when it comes to. But then again, they may surprise us with stuff, so you know.
Meanwhile,
But
we're digging
meanwhile,
into everything that we're actually seeing in the game.
right. So where was I? So yeah, so the whole thing is that Kamiloka seems to be posed as the sus guy in this in the flashback, but I suspect that Kamiloka, which is, I mean, surely was no saint, but I suspect that because how he ends up, which is basically in that sphere thing, and with a mask, with an artificial head mask, whatever, it tells me that he didn't get the good end of the the good the good of the straw, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and besides, if you read the logs in the exploration later on, uh, it mentions that there were two employees in the facility that had a particular um, affinity or ease about them of using electro-based material. One of them was Kaniloka, and the other one was Tishalja.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, mm, you know, it's one of these things in which we kind of it's one of the narrative plays with you. So it presents you this woman, this Mamulja gentle healer, because she's a healer.
Right.
Uh, and anyone who
Of
plays
course
healer
she's a
should know
healer.
better.
Of
Should
course
know
she's a
better.
healer.
uh, because it makes you naturally more inclined to believe she's the victim. I
No.
doubt it's the
No, it does
case.
not. Healers are
So
insane, power hungry
yeah,
monsters.
yeah, yeah. Especially white mages.
Yes.
so so yeah, and from there we go into solution 9 because we have we give the thing to Shale to the cipher, and it's from there that we go to Shalani with Koana to right
Mm-hmm.
from to learn about the so right that section. Ah, I feel like I'm rambling so much, but I streamed the whole thing myself,
Yeah.
which I usually don't do. But and it was fascinating. But first, give your thoughts because I know I'm going to ramble about this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So I found the like overall MSQ kind of dry. It's a lot of setup, and it's very much a point one um, patch. So, the Grand Cosmos, we're positioning pieces right now. So
Mm,
I've withheld my judgment basically until the next patch because I know my reaction right now isn't going to be accurate as far as the whole. And I did the same thing with Dawn Trail as kind of withholding my judgment as a whole on Dawn Trail. Was it a great expansion? It was okay. Um, but it's not finished yet, and it's kind of still going. So it's hard to kind of put a patch in that spot without knowing what comes after. One thing I do want to do, I wanted to do it before the year ended, kind of as a community stream, is I wanted to rank all the patches and expansions and just see where
right,
everybody thinks everything lands.
right, right.
So
I mean, yeah,
that's kind of my take on everything right now. So I'm gonna hesitate on like giving my deep thoughts because there's been a lot of movement, but not a lot of development, if that makes sense.
right, right. No, not development, but you know how I read things, so
Yeah.
which is arguably my job in the crew.
Mm-hmm.
So all that, all that crazy stuff. I am the one who bears the blame.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, so going into that, the you know everything's in themes
Mm-hmm.
basically, which is why it's useful to have other people pointing at the small things that are happening on screen.
Right.
Because I read on a broader scale level, um, and it's not wise either to lose entire sight of what's happening in front of you instead of going ahead.
Right.
But you know, anyways, but but the thing with Koana, I was so so interesting and so meaningful because Kona rejected his heritage, his Hetzaro heritage,
Yeah.
uh, because of a misunderstanding. He believed that his parents had
Abandoned
left
him.
him to
Yeah.
die, abandoned him because he was not strong enough or he was burdened, and he was left to believe that the ways of the Hetzaru were old-fashioned and wrong and noxious.
Hmm.
So he went to study in Charlian to try and bring advance and technology to Tutoral
Yeah.
and basically try to get rid of these traditions that he felt that were harming in instead.
Right.
So so that's the thing. Kona goes in there because he is like, well, if I'm going to be Dawn Servant, I have to know the traditions of these people. So he goes a bit reluctantly, but he has the will of learning more.
Yeah. But
Uh,
it turns out
which
his parents were heroes who actually
mhm.
saved his life.
He only learns this later on though,
Yeah.
because he gets to interact with the Ronick and all that stuff,
Right.
and he learns about what it means to and we get into the naturalism themes of this, in which this is something that I will always be vocal about, and it's after Endwalker, but because Endwalker does its mental narrative tricks, uh, and I think we were discussing this with Synodic Scribe like
Hmm.
months ago,
Yeah.
and how Elpis is hardly any anything because most of the fan base were like no, the ancients had to go because of how they treated their creations, and you see that in Elpis, and it's like, mate, Elpis, one, it's a research facility, so it has a really specific purpose, and
Hmm.
second, it's stated to be an isolated post with its own rules and protocols,
Right.
to the point that we have the rule of the no mask and cowl for visitors,
Yep.
which he states that are not the usual thing, that this is an exception for Elpis. So you're basically judging an entire race for one, an isolated outpost, which is a research facility. It is as if someone came to judge humanity due to how people treat rats in a lab, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's
And
like,
we've seen one slice of life in the ancient world, really, and we're judging everything based on that little bit that we've seen.
mm, correct. So when it
And you
comes
know what?
to
So
this,
so is Hades, or not Hades, Hermes.
yes, Hermes, yeah, true, not Hades. Poor thing. He spent 12K years roaming the source and the shards. He's the one person that knows more about the true life of the Thunder. Please.
Yeah, but he spent so long in Elpis he forgot.
But Hermes. But then again, Hermes is another narrative trap because uh, oh, I could talk about the narrative tricks of Endwalker for a while now, though.
Hmm.
It's Hermes. We're presented to him being, you remember Endwalker. We're presented to him being so caring with the animals and the creations, and we're led. Like the narrative kind of handholds you into believing, oh, look at Hermes, he's so kind to the animals and the creations. Surely he has a pure life uh, loving heart. Uh, and it's the ancients that, with their attitude, are making me and making someone who cares for life suffer so much. It's a trap. You go to his short story and you read that short story about from his point of view. He despises other people. He's sociopath,
Hmm.
colored by depression, sure, but all the life he has for the animals is the love that he doesn't have for his fellow man.
Right.
And it's like, okay. And it's one of these things that uh, you start digging into Endwalker and you realize that all of this argumentation about why the ancients had to go is it's all fabrication, really.
Oh, I agree.
It's built on fallacies.
Yep.
But yeah, the whole thing about this
And
though
yes,
is that
Ellie.
True, yeah. And the whole thing about the ancients, I mean, it can be a bit jarring for us because we're used to eating meat and the animal and all that. But the thing the ancients actually use their ethers, not so different to how we take an animal and we slaughter the animal, we
Mhm.
eat it, and then you use the lead, the skin, the bones, and all that, and we make use of that. And it's and in more tribalistic culture, though I suppose in a sense still remains, it was a form to pay respect to the creature you basically taken the life of by giving it another purpose in life. So it was a form of respect. It was not just hunting because, yes, but it was a form of embracing your place in nature.
Right.
So the ancients do it in a different way, but it amounts to the same. You're basically taking the ether of the creature and repurposing it. So the whole discourse about the ancients being callous to their creatures is bullshit. So I'm not going to abide by
So,
that any
I mean,
longer.
if you think about it, it's exactly the same as kind of what we do now. When something dies, it returns to the earth. It becomes nutrients basically for new life that grows, which is exactly the same cycle as they use with ether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Koana learns about all of this with the Ronic, and he learns what they mean to the Hetzaru, and he grows fond of them. And as the Ronic are
Yeah, he
basically,
makes a friend.
uh, he makes a friend. The Ronic are basically this creature that gives them the materials and the tools they need to prosper and build their own homes and build their and have medicine and have everything. It all comes from the Ronic. So in return, the head Sarah consider them their protectors at the same time, well, quote unquote, making use of them, but it's basically taking like the bounty that they give to you. And you know what? I was in the process of this, discussing the implication of this when I was streaming this. And I just chanced to, move the camera again, one of these fortuitous happenings. And I was like, Ellie was watching. I was like, wait a moment. Do you remember the Ronic that have like these horns or bone mask of things? You know,
Mhm.
uh, I turned the camera and I was like, wait a moment. The shape of this mask, horn, whatever it is, and I was like, am I tripping balls or is the same shape that Evolution Zodiac has? And we went to check, and indeed, it's the same shape. To the and I mean the outline. It's not like it, but even so, they took the bother to even color, like all the Ronic have this bit of tribal painting in the
Yep.
mask horns
Yep.
that is red and violet. Those are the colors associated with the Asians, or
Hmm.
rather Zodiac. And I was like, with all the themes and all that, I was like, okay, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing.
AC, I would say that goes back to what I was talking about with Alexander, where we created a timeline that should never have existed,
Do
and
not get me. Don't get
and,
me started on
and
lyrics.
yeah,
Do not.
and those
Do
paradoxes are
not.
all the fallacies that we created, which led to the creation of the timeline that we're in. Anyway,
Don't get me started on lyrics. I I will go ham on that. But I mean, I suppose at some point I will have to do a lyric video. Oh fuck. Right. So back to Koana.
yeah.
So that was so that was so important because later on, like, we have this situation in which we have the instance in which Koana gets in like in the middle of the Ronic and the dinosaur creature that wants to eat it, and and protects it with his own body actually. And then Lamat and the Word of Light join him to protect the thing and fight it. And think things considered, consider that they're both the vow of resolve and reason, and we see how Conan works. And I was paying attention to how the mechanics were playing and dialogue lines.
Mhm.
And what Conan does there is using machinist techniques to spot a weak point and all that stuff in the ether.
Hi, Ein.
And uh, and and if it already was, I was already thinking of, because resolve reason, I was thinking, is this actually giving us an insight of how, is it even an insight of how Asum and Hades work together?
Mhm.
And with the moment Koana did the ether analysis into weak points, I was like, okay, yeah, because because of the ether vision, which is, if you recall in Walker, it's pointed out. I mean, Hades mentions to Hylodeus that he can use his exceptional ether sight to spot weak points, but in this scenario, we're talking about Dawntrail being the scenario, the whole meta narrative for Asm and Hades. So it was the moment it was like, okay, I see what we're doing. I see what you're doing. Uh, and I mean, of course, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident on my chances here.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it was quite interesting to have that as, I mean, in the end, Asm and Hades are both Asm, so they're both two aspects of Asm, so it just tracks if it of Asm as concept title. You understand, we call Asm because it's the easy way to do it, but we have to bear in mind that it's actually a title. It's not just precluded to our Asm.
Right. I
It's
mean, Vana is also
it's
Asm, so.
yeah, well, was, but yeah. uh but yes, so after that, it's when Kona learns about the story about his parents. And I was like, I was when they were trying to protect him and left, quote unquote, him behind, and and it changes his whole perception of the Hetsaro and his own story and all that. And considering where we're coming from, I couldn't help but think, and I will elaborate at some point in this, as in, because I've had that idea in my mind, and it was like, is it this teasing about the warrior of light themselves, in the sense of learning that so far we've been led to believe that Asum defected the convocation and that they were deemed a defector and a traitor by the convocation. But there are actually hints that defy this. But I'm not going to go into them right now, and
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is material for a script. But and it was like, it led me to, because this is a theme I've seen with Koana right now. What if the convocation, uh, quote unquote, struck Asim's memory, in, so to speak, in order to protect them? And we've been led to believe that all of this has been a conflict when it actually has not. I'm not going to go into this. This is material for a script, and I have to discuss this with
It
you
was
guys.
by design.
It was by design. But yeah, just leaving that there, because there's a theme, and it's not the only clue we get about this.
Right.
So let's leave it
Well,
at that there.
we
And
are
my cats
actually
are fighting
close
each
to
other.
time, so I don't know if you want to start going into this or.
Oof. It's, I can I into this thing, no, but to conclude, I can conclude
Okay.
the storyline about 7.1, which is the moment I lost my marbles entirely. As Ayumi was clipped very kindly, because we get Sven back,
Right.
but not the same Sven exactly.
Correct.
And and uh, and there's this whole thing about, we're going to make you, all of you, endless, but it's only for 5,000 of you. Uh, and you played Line Returns.
Yeah.
So Ellie has not played. She wants to play the trilogy, so no spoilers. But surely you get why I point this out.
Mm-hmm.
And even though this is on a small scale, as considering what I suspect is going on here, but aside from that, uh, of course, I mean, we have reasons to believe that this Fiend is actually just if the previous Fiend had a part of her soul in there, this one doesn't. So we can, so we can, so
Sorry.
we can assume that this is preservation fully
Oh, yeah.
intervening.
I assume as much. I was just laughing at what AC Gears and Arms said. You heard of Phoenix right? Meet Phoenix wrong. But
But
I was just kind of put off a little bit because this feels exactly the same as Elidibus and Ardbert in Shadowbringers.
I mean, it makes sense considering that we're coming from Shadowbringers, and Dontrell doesn't hide the Shadowbringers references.
True.
But I mean, uh, the whole thing here though is that parallel you brought with Albert is so on point, but not going to delve into that though.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the other thing that made me lose it was when the regulators rewrote the memories of the people. It was the
Mm-hmm.
moment I realized we're dealing with someone
Oh,
rewriting history. I
that
mean,
was
right now,
my initial thought as soon as the memories came out was if memories can come out, memories can go in.
aside from that, but um, aside from that, which leads to many implications that we don't have time now to
Yep.
go over.
Yep.
But um, but it's the moment. I mean, it makes all the sense that they chose Futures of Written as the ultimate for this patch, because they're basically doing that. They're writing history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that the ultimate is another can of worms when it comes to stuff. So.
Yeah, and we'll talk about people, or we'll talk about that
We
when we
need
have people who've actually done it.
yeah, we need an ass a bit to that. I've been looking at the fight, but and it's loaded, but I know Inez mentioned that there was 11 stuff in there,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and and in that, of course, we're not experts,
Yep.
so we need our experts. So, but yeah, it was the moment in which I was like, right now it's only memories here, but and there's also the fact that we spoke about against Sphene, and
Mm-hmm.
now the people of Everkeep are like, fuck you, and 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 it already puts us in a position of being the outcasts,
Right.
which is, I suspect, this is going something that's going to happen eventually to the Warrior of Light. Because I don't know if you realize, but the place in which in which the Oblivion has been meeting in Everkeep is called the back room. A back room,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of video game programming, is like the liminal space between areas, which is like this sort of space in between um, map zones and stuff, right?
Right.
Uh, Effectively, it's like the chrysalis. So we're uh, the chrysalis is also a point in between space, in between realities.
Mm-hmm.
So if you realize about that, we've been conducting meetings in the same way the Asians do, in the same concept the Asians do. So think about that.
So does that mean we
And
can go to the Chrysalis and hang out there? Because I really
I
want
mean,
to, because that place is
I mean,
awesome.
it would be nice. The Chrysalis is another place
I
that
just
I
want
would
to know
like
where that
to
door
talk
goes.
about. That's true, but yeah. And what else was there? Ah, of course, the stinger. See, the stinger is I mean, I'm not going to say confirm, but to me, kind of confirm that Sphene, or if that's actually her real name, that's another possibility that it's not even her
So
real name.
Sphene is just an illusion,
Um,
just like the other one. Sphene is just a program that runs.
that confirm to me at least
Hmm.
that she is a child of Azem, because the moment she awakes, she's like, it's the sequence, how it's how the sequence is shot. It's like
I
we're
see.
in her point of view,
Yep.
and it's like, where are my people? Are they safe? Like, why am I here? And she's lost, and it's almost like, imagine that if that
Mm.
happened at some point, or if it's going to happen to Asim's consciousness inside the world of light, and the
So
first thing they think is, what's happened to my world?
so I would say that that would be analogous to post sundering, but people didn't have language. We know that, and weren't really capable of speech or thought like that. But I would disagree that Sphene is a shard of Azem just because what she did to me is inconsistent with Azem's MO, which was Azem wouldn't turtle up and basically cut themselves off from the world. They would go out into the world, try and face whatever it was that was threatening, and then
Yes,
either
but
either
that's
win
the
or
version
lose.
of the story we have, though.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
problem. How
Exactly,
much of
Ellie.
it is That's the problem. How much of it is true?
Right.
And we also have to bear in mind that Sphene, as we meet her, is not the real Sphene.
Correct.
She's an
We
idealization
we have never met
made
Sphene.
of the idea.
We have never
Yeah,
met Sphene. The Sphene that awoke in living memory, that's the real Sphene that we have
yeah.
yet to meet. And they have no idea who we are.
Hmm.
Because as far
So,
as the impression I got, they awoke and they are straight from, you know, your soul has been
right,
extracted and your
right by
memories
the
along with
end
it.
of the Storm Surge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything that's happened in the meantime, this fiend has no idea of. This is the
Hmm.
base level Sphene program that somehow has been reconstituted. Now,
Hmm.
whether that Sphene is an endless or is actually created, I don't know.
I suspect she would be like something like a soul disembodied in a similar sense, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, like not different from the science in Shadowbringers,
Okay.
which is kind of like a corporeal soul.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she's going to live after this,
Which means her time is
and if she,
limited, which means that lends to your theory uh, that she might be a shard of Azem, and I hate that. Um, because then the only way to save her is to absorb her into us. Um,
though there's a bit of there's a bit of here we go again with the whole thing about um um so we've been finding out more things to add to the pile of Alexander originally came from the 12th.
mhm,
I mean, again, it could easily have. There's also the very real possibility that it ate the remaining shards and then latched on the nymph, and then it went to the source.
mhm.
Yeah, that's a real possibility there. But at the same time, I feel like there's something else even going on, in the sense of uh, we're dealing with different timelines created, and the original Sphene may have been rejoined with the rest of the shard back then, and there was a divergence created by preservation, in which they got Alexandria out of there in a different timeline. So
Mhm.
it's it when it comes to time fuckery, they can do many things, and it can become such a complete mess, which I believe is the aim, to get to the point in which so many timelines and realities are created that the world is going to eventually collapse onto itself, which is what happened in 13 too.
That's Ellie. That's exactly what I've been saying, which is they may have come to the source from the ninth, but I don't think they originated from the ninth.
Neither do I. I mean, there's so many things that point at the 12.
Yeah.
Like
So
they're playing with that. But what in
they're playing
which
with
case?
semantics, basically.
I mean, they do that constantly, but
Yeah.
um, they take refuge in semantics. But the most important thing there is it proves how gullible the fan base is.
I
Like you can
don't.
tell the fan base anything and they won't question it.
I, I
That's I.
I don't think it's that they're gullible. I think media literacy just isn't that good, and a lot of people don't pay close attention to the story.
I mean, yeah.
So I mean, I still think back to what Yoshi P said, which was very insulting. Was just like, "Wow, you guys are really paying attention, aren't you?" Um, and to us, of course, it's like, well, yeah, obviously that's why we're here, but it's easy to forget that that's not why everybody's here. And there are people who just kind of
You're still
drifted
salty at
out.
him for that comment.
I really am. I'm never gonna let that go. Um, but yeah. So anyway, we should probably wrap for today. But we will
Yeah.
be back next week, same time, same place. But then we'll talk about possibly a new time slot that we're going to be having. So we
Mm-hmm.
will let everybody know as soon as we figure that out. So,
Yeah.
yep,
And we're naturally going to be working on the scripts,
yep.
and I'm going to work up to the bone with that.
Good. I need to get
And
back into
so
editing. I miss it. It's fun.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. Uh,
All right.
so
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Yeah, same lore time, same lore channel. Uh, so
right.
yeah, we will be back next
So
time,
yeah,
and
and
we'll
tomorrow it's Tactics Advanced stream. So yeah, you
hey,
can join us for that.
awesome. All right, everybody, have a great one.
Have a great one.